Infrastructure, basically, we all know what that is what we use every day. The services provided to make this great city the city it is. The City of Belleville and all municipalities provide about 65% of the things that you need to do every day. The upper governments, federal and the provincial, provide about 35%. We receive out of every tax dollar collected, whether that's income tax, whether it's HST, driver's license tax that's hidden, license plate, we receive about 8 cents on every dollar to provide 65% of the services. Our tax base is basically, and our revenues are controlled by the upper governments. You look at how we fix our infrastructure is basically the taxpayer or the tax base user fees, and council has been able to add some solar generation revenue to it, but we are limited. So we have to rely on a lot of upper governments to try to get our infrastructure fixed. As saying this, most cities in Ontario and in Canada were built around the same time as Belleville, so it's not a new thing that infrastructure is behind. It's not any particular city. Most cities right now are trying to manage it. Others are trying to get out ahead of it, like ourselves. Ottawa has an asset management plan. They have a 10-year plan basically of catching up on their infrastructure. So when you look at the projects that we pick, some of them roads, industrial park, downtown, police services, are all things that are in our corporate business plan. So basically, when we have our assets, we have about $3.5 billion worth of assets. This includes our facilities, our treatment plants, our roads, under pipes, and we have approximately $400 million in repairs that we're behind. You think $400 million is a lot of money, but you look at, and you compare it to the assets we own, it's not as huge as a number if you do it in percentage-wise. So we have quite a task to try to catch up. I believe in 2006, when I became mayor, our number was probably in around the 500 to 550 million, and I have some charts to show this later on in the presentation. So basically, when you have that much in assets, to do basic maintenance of your assets, it's somewhere around the $15 to $30 million mark, 40 million mark, maybe even 50, that we should be spending each year to get ahead. Basically, if you're spending around 15 to 16 million, it's like making basic or minimum payment on your credit card. You're not getting ahead. You're not knocking any of the $400 million problem that we have. When I drill back to what other councils have done and look at their strategies, and basically 2000 to 2002, 9.1 million was spent. 2003 to 2006 was 18.8 million. I ran and got elected in 2006 on a platform of taking the problem, all council, I believe, of the day, of trying to manage our infrastructure, try to get ahead of it, try to get an asset management plan. Our average has been about 35.4 million. So we've been able to knock off the minimum payment of the credit card, and basically council that I've led has done $248 million in infrastructure repair, are currently finished or moving towards next year. When you look and add up, and I have the figures from the 3 years prior, I don't have on the slide, 3 years prior to that, 2000 slide, what was spent on infrastructure was about 10 million. So when you add up about the last 12 years prior to me becoming mayor, it was about $105 million in infrastructure repairs. Basically, when all our asset management reports, the Ontario government are saying with that much assets, you should be doing at least 25 to $30 million a year. This is where the deficit started. So we have a choice. We can either go down the same road and keep going. So based on our assets at 3.5, 25 to 50, we achieved in the middle, at least we're knocking it down. When you go forward, there's different strategies. And basically, when I was elected in 2006, the CAO of the city was Steve Hyman, and he's in Peterborough now, and he's actually dropped down here tonight to listen to my speech. We had a long talk before I was sworn in, and Steve said, you know, basically, as a company and as a corporation, we have to manage our assets. We have a problem. We have to take care of it. The strategy that past councils have looked at was basically a pay-as-you-go system, and a pay-as-you-go means putting so much on your operating budget for your capital to fix your capital assets, and it's a fixed amount depending on which council it was. It's probably anywhere from $5 to $7 million. So that's what they were allotting for infrastructure repair. Now we have user pay, which is not on your taxes, it's sewer and water, and therefore they were allowing anywhere from about 8 to 15 million on a high year fixing infrastructure, which is minimum payment on your credit card. So I said to Stephen, we got in, I said, basically we have to change our strategy. So how do we change our strategy? Do we keep going down the same road and doing minimum payments? Well, with doing minimum payments on anything, interest rates fluctuate, cost of gasoline, which most of our infrastructure relies heavily on oil, asphalt. So we all know where those prices have gone up in the last 10 years. Construction costs in the last 10 years are up, I believe, about 50%. So it's hard to catch up when you're trying to save for a project, and the project is millions and millions of dollars. So I said to Steve, basically, we've got three types of strategy. We can do pay-as-you-go, do minimum repair, and the asset or our deficit in infrastructure will keep building. We can try a strategy of going to the provincial governments and the federal governments and saying, hey, we need your help. We were lucky in 2006. That's the strategy we went with. We received probably around just over $100 million from both the provincial and federal governments. This is one of the buildings we're standing in today, a $35 million building that was paid 66% by upper governments. Other projects that were paid by federal or provincial governments: Veterans Bridge, the intersection at the mall, Sydney Street Bridge, Stream Bridge, Myers Pier. These are all either total payment by upper governments or two-third partnerships. Other projects were Lingham Street, a lot of about $6 or $7 million in roads, which are Octavia Street, and all those were done and paid for by lobbying the government. We were very lucky over the 4 years. So in the 4 years, we were able to not only knock off minimum payment on our infrastructure, you can see with doing about $280 million, we actually were able to take a big chunk and knock that $100 million off. So over the last 2 years, basically, the federal and provincial governments have tightened up their purse strings. Today they announced, and it might be in the paper tomorrow, they canceled a program called Connecting Link program. Connecting Link is a highway program, any connecting links. So the intersection that we did this year at Krabby Joe's, North Front Street repair last year that we done was, I believe, 70% paid for by the provincial government. So any connecting link provincial highways are paid for. We have to apply for them. We have to wait, and it's hit and miss. Every other year we would get maybe $500,000, $600,000 to do these projects. It's officially done, canceled. So that's even over with. So basically, 2 years ago when I talked to, at the time I believe it was Minister Wynne, which now is our Premier, she was the Minister of Infrastructure, or no, Minister of Transportation. And I went to Minister Wynne and they said, we have a bridge that goes over to Switz Island. It connects two of your highways. We don't really own either of the highways, Dundas Street and a download, that's arguable. This Dundas Street is still considered a connecting link at that point. The bridge going over to the county is owned by the province. The train bridge is totally owned by us. We have to fix the whole bridge. It was downloaded to us, I believe, in around the 90s. The repair on that bridge with doing the road probably is going to be around $12 million. We have budget for that. So if we're doing a pay-as-you-go scenario, we budget about $7 million a year. We've got a $12 million bridge out of the gate. How do you manage to do these things? Talk to the minister. The minister says, Mayor Ellis, all municipalities your size, built in the age, are in the same problem. We know there's a problem. We're going to try to work on a long-term sustainable infrastructure, a big fund that will fix bridges like this. We'll fix projects that use 2 to 3 years capital. And you can imagine a city, maybe say like Bancroft, or a city that's far up north that has the same bridge that's costing them $12 million, that maybe only has 5,000 residents and a lower tax base. So we're all in the same. And the minister realized that at this time, she said, come back, springtime, we're going to have some type of long-term sustainable infrastructure program. Well, we went to the speech. The premier at the time was Mr. McGinney, I believe. And he gave a nice speech, and he said, the province now has changed gears. We've decided not to invest in infrastructure. We're going to invest in education. So they chose education, which, again, I won't comment on that, but it left us hanging out. So the programs that were promised, the bridge, the sustainable money, never happened. Will it happen? Again, it might happen next year. It might happen the next year. But every year that we sit still and we do minimum payment, the other part grows. So the strategy we have now, the first strategy we inherited was pay-as-you-go. Didn't work for last councils, as you see on the sheet. We never did it. We did the pay-as-you-go strategy, lobby upper governments. It worked for the first 4 years. Very successful with those projects. There's other projects that I haven't named. The last couple of years, as I say, the money has tightened up. So I sat down with senior management and I said, you know, if we keep going on the pay-as-you-go strategy, all of a sudden we're making minimum payment, and down the road we're I can't say no better, but in the sense we have just let that problem grow and we're inheriting it to the next council. That's the easiest thing to do. Pass it off to the next guy. I said, I'm not in for that. So we need to look at a strategy. The provincial government has come up with a program to lend municipalities money for infrastructure at 3.25% for 20 years locked in. So I talked to the ministers, it would have been last fall at AMO. They asked us if we're interested in the program and that we should consider going this way and maybe looking after ourselves. Well, I'm a firm believer if you start passing things off, nothing is going to get done, and that we do have to look after ourselves. We have to have a plan, and we have to get out of ahead of it like cities like Ottawa. So we sat down in October, I talked to council, we talked to staff, and we said, okay, I said to the treasurer, I said, what's the highest price we've ever borrowed at? And Brian, the treasurer, said 12%. So we've actually borrowed and done projects at 12%. Right now, the interest rates are the lowest interest rates that we've had, I believe, since the 1940s. In risk management, basically, the best money to borrow is mortgage money, long-term, locked in at the lowest rates. So the province realizes this is a great plan. We brought it back. We talked to council about it. We said, you know, let's go out and see what we can do. So when we keep moving through, we sat down, and this is kind of backtracking with every council, and this started, Steve Hyman, I believe, brought it with us under former Mayor Sills. It was to let's get some strategic planning done, let's get a business plan done, and let's have a plan to where we're going. So in 2006, when I became mayor, we sat down with a new council. We have a business plan that is a public document, and this is all in public session. And staff, we took a business plan that we inherited from last council that had our themes. So some of the themes that last council had was a library, they delivered on that, was a fire master plan, was a water main, was a police station, was a fire station, but they didn't get there because they didn't have the resources or a strategy to get there. So I know all of us have sat on boards here. All of us have had the luxury of probably doing strategic plans. So we do strategic plans and business plans. We did one, we printed it here, they're at the back if you even got it, and we went through, and I call it niceness. So you sit around for a day, if you're real lucky, we didn't, you get to go to Bahamas or you get to go out of town and you do this, and then you seem to come back and you put it on a shelf and nobody pays any attention to it. And I won't ask you to raise your hands if you've been on an organization that has done that, but I have. I've been in organizations that do that all the time, and I think if you didn't raise your hand, then I think you've got a great organization. So with leading this council, our strategic themes are up here, and I won't read them to you. And then we had a business plan. So we took the business plan of last council. Council had it before in 2006, went through it, and we had a meeting, and I said to council, okay, you went through the business plan. This business plan basically had all the needs that was done by staff in last council of what we needed in the city. So it had the Veterans Bridge in it. It has the Bulls Arena had it had a swimming pool. So council sat down, went through it. We come back in a couple hours, and I said, okay, let's pick our strategic themes. In 2006, let's pick our strategic themes, and you see them on basically here. I said, okay, let's pick our capital projects. The number one pick of council in 2006 was the Veterans Bridge. So we had about 7 or 8 themes in that. We had, one was the Veterans Bridge, was the Switz Island, or not Switz Island, the Myers Pier, starting the water main project, and we were able to knock these off by using the strategy of upper government funding. So the problem we get is now we've gone and we've lost that money. So I have this, and I have a book, and I have a direction to council to say, how do we go now? Do we tell the people we can't go any farther? Because that's where we're at. Are we like last councils and we say, hey, I stood up in the Empire Stage, I promised you this, I promised you that, but there's no money, we can't do it, we can't figure you out. And that's, I believe, how politicians get bad names. So if you promise something, you should be able to figure out how to get there. So sitting down, and I said, you know, cost of borrowing is going to go up. We need to look at a new plan. So the new plan would be low interest loan, locked in, and to knock off some of the pileup of infrastructure we have. So we could do nothing. I guess, will it get fixed? Will there be the magic fairy that waves her wand and fixes it? We see that hasn't happened. We can wait for upper governments, and I see MPP Todd Smith's in the background here now, and the police chief, so she's looking for some money for the police station. Hopefully you've got about 5 or 6 million. And again, Todd will tell you the province basically probably won't have any type of infrastructure program going forward. So we can wait and we can wait. We can wait 2 years, we can wait 4 years, we can wait 6 years, but I'm not willing to wait. I'm not willing to sit still. We need to keep moving on. So we need to take a look at the financing, our most precious need. I ask you, I've asked everybody, every time I give this speech, I've asked on TV, I've asked that. If there's a better strategy, if there's a better plan, I want to talk to you. I want you to come. I want you to send me an email. I've said that many a times. I have had not one person approach me with a better strategy. I had one gentleman said, well, let's not do anything. Okay, let's not do anything. We're not going to do anything at all. No. So how is the $400 million problem going to go away? Because the $400 million program, or the problem, in 10 years is going to be $1 billion problem. Well, we'll worry about it then. The problem we got is growth. If we do not fix the basic infrastructure, and for instance, and I got to watch how I say that because I have some people that live in these neighborhoods, so I might make them generic. But for instance, the water main that goes, the main trunk feeder water main has been in our long-term business plan for 10 years. I've been mayor for 7 years this year. It's still not done. We started it as a council. The water main project totally is probably going to be about $16 million. When we built Veterans Bridge, we hung the water main off the bridge, and we've got it over here almost to the pump plant that is at the car park. It's down in the park, and it ends at West Mawire. We now have to take that water main from the Dundas Street water plant, so it's got to go down Sydney, down Bridge Street, down Yeoman Street, punch through the railroad tracks at Frank Street, all the way up to Quinney School, down through Quinney Gardens, down McDonald Avenue, I believe it is, into the park. That project alone right now is probably at $12 million. If we don't fix that, our industrial park is in danger. A lot of the suppliers are starting to say, we don't have water pressure at night when you fill your tanks. I think we fill our tanks at about 11 o'clock at night till 5 o'clock in the morning. We have two underground reservoirs and a big tank that sits on the hill. This creates water pressure drop in the industrial park. It creates problems for our industry. The other thing is expanded growth. As we go out in Thurlow, the elevation is going up. Eventually in our long-term plan, there is a water tower in Thurlow that we're going to have to build. Staff have done a great job of duct taping red-green the pumps and the pipes and that, but if we're expanding, the more we expand, if you're in some of the subdivisions, your water pressure is less than desirable. These are projects, if we don't do, eventually the ministry is going to say to us, you're not going to have any more building. You're going to be like the Sugogs. You're going to be like the Brocks. You're going to have orders that are ordered against you. When I became mayor in 2007, we were close to having an order shoved on our wastewater plant. Reason being, we didn't do proper maintenance on it. We were probably this close to having all buildings shut down in the city of Belleville because we weren't repairing our assets. We had to take the roof off the wastewater plant and put a screen or a filter or something to catch everything that was going. We have done maintenance on that plant. This council, over the last 6-7 years, we've had a maintenance plan on our wastewater plant that's been about $700,000 to $1 million, I believe, our engineers in there, close maintenance plan that we have been keeping our wastewater, this council, up, but we still have a problem. Last year and the year before, so 2011, 2012, we had 5, and I got to word this right because I'll get in trouble from staff, untotally treated, Brad, what's the proper terminology in the engineering? Secondary bypass of sewage into the bay. 5 times this in 2012, 5 times in 2011. How many times is acceptable? Tom's here. Tom's my green counselor. Is 5 times acceptable, Tom? No, Tom's gone. Tom, Journey's shaking his head. Yes, no, that's Tom's gone. Eventually, 5 times is not acceptable. The ministry is going to come into us one day, as the ministry does, and the ministry is like our father or our mother. They control us, the province, right, Mr. Smith? And they're going to say, if you don't have these bypasses fixed or down to a reasonable amount, you're not going to have any more growth. That problem alone, to fix it totally, is probably close to a $40 million fix. We probably need to spend $10 million as our estimate to build our first secondary bypass tank. So when you do have a lot of rain and water coming in, that instead of pumping it out in the bay, we'll at least pump into a tank and then hopefully treat it to the full capacity and then send it into the bay. But having said that, roads that we're doing, sewer pipes that we've been doing, we're taking old connections. And how the city was built not too long ago, probably in the 50s, storm sewer and sanitary sewer should be separated. We're treating in our plant rainwater. Staff have been at a real pace of trying to separate this. Lingham Street this year was a sewer stormwater separation. I believe Donald Street this year, that we're doing Donald or Area Bodwell are all disconnecting. So we've actually had record growth, but the numbers at our sewer plant, the numbers are going down because we've been able to separate that storm out, but we still can't get by the heavy rainfalls, and we're still bypassing into the bay 5 times a year. So in organizations, change is the hardest, and I think anybody that runs any organization that you find it's change is the hardest. Why did past councils keep going pay as you go? It's change. It's try to move to a different way of doing things. So in order to change an organization, this is a great saying that I got this out of a book. You've got to realize that it's in your heart, you need to change, and what you're doing is not going to work. And I think we see that now in the public. I think we see that with staff and with council. We do not want to pass this type of problem off to future generations. A lot of people will say, well, you know, we don't want to borrow money. Well, good debt or bad debt? And, you know, I would say bad debt is if you're borrowing money to buy groceries, if you're borrowing money to lower taxes, if you're buying money or borrowing money to buy Director Bove a new car that's only going to last 5 years, if you're borrowing a ton of money as a municipality. But we're borrowing money that's on a 20-year term to fix assets that are going to last 30 to 40 to 50 years. So when you look at an asset and asset management, you know, we'll get the assets to match. Well, this city usually makes things last 90 years. So our assets and roads are around a 40-year life cycle, but we have been stretching it. So it's not like we're going out and borrowing at 3.25% and building things that are going to be wore out in 20 years. We are building things that are going to create growth, are going to create economic drivers, are going to create companies when they look at cities and when they look and do Google of industry seeing, do we have our water plant running? One of the first things that Karen posts when we go out, most industries will ask, what's your water plant and what's your sewer capacity? Our water plant has lots of capacity, we just don't have a lot of pressure. Our sewer plant, the capacity is there on a lot of good days, but it's filling up quickly when we're pumping storm water into the system. So again, we talked about the pay-as-you-go. Again, in business, a lot of people, and I won't get into this, we should do a squad or a risk analysis on all of it. If you want to stick around for an hour of teaching on that, we can look. But what are the risks of doing this? What are the risks of not doing it? I think the risk is greater. If we don't do anything and go back to pay-as-you-go, we don't fix the water main, well, I can tell you, Jackie, we're not going to have any expansion out in Thurlow, you know that. We're not going to have industries that are going to be able to, when your pressure drops at 15 pounds at night, and it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse every year as people are hooking up to the system. So I said to staff, I said, you know, take our business plan, take a look at it, go back and take some key priority issues that are in the business plan. I asked council, all of them, to go out and talk to the public, to talk to their friends. I asked council if there's anything in the business plan that they would like to champion. Over the last 3 weeks, or well, this has probably been about a month and a half, I asked. There's been council that phoned me that said, Mayor Ellis, in this plan we've allotted basically not enough for roads, $17 million for roads. $17 million is a lot of money. If you won the lottery, $17 million, I think we could go on a trip. But when you look at roads, Dundas Street West that we, or Dundas Street East that we just finished was $3.1 million. Krabby Joe's intersection, I believe, was 1.8. What's there? around there, 1.5 million. North Park Street, or the other one was North Park Gardens, 2.6 million, something like that. So people would recognize some of those street names. Charles Street, the short block on Charles Street, I think it was 1.8. Chatham was 1.9. That's the cost of doing roads. So when you look at roads, $17 million, is that enough? Well, when you look at, say, the bridge, if instead of using our gas tax money or this year's capital, and council says let's put the Switz Island Bridge into the Belleville plan, there's about $13 million used up, $12 million. Doing the road from the courthouse up to the bridge is probably another million or so. And then say if we go to the reserve, and this is kind of my sense of humor. You know when you're on the reserve? Why do you know when you're on the reserve? Because the roads are good. And so when you drive down to the reserve, not that any of us go there, but you're going to 401, you'll notice when the road and the sign hits, you'll know when you're out of Belleville. Coming back, you'll know where Belleville is. So to do from the reserve boundary what we own, the road to Point Anne, where it goes to double highway, is $2.7 million, I believe, to do that road. So if you add up the bridge and you add up, we can blow $17 million on Dundas Street and not do another road. So I've had a few in council say we need to allot more for roads, and I tend to agree with that. I believe in so one of these slides, about 51% of municipal roads are beyond their life cycle in Ontario. I would think we're in the average of 51%, that our roads are that bad. So what scares me, I guess, I grew up and was raised and born in Belleville. I grew up in the West Hill. Catherine Street, I can remember when they did Catherine Street, and I'm not that old. Take a drive down Catherine Street tonight, it's probably one of the worst roads in Belleville. So when you're my age and you can remember roads were done and they're in dire state of repair, but other roads have never been touched, how do you ever get through the cycle on the same plan? You look at the police station, we've got an estimate of 21 million. What I'm hearing here, you know, again, the chief had a tape. We are going to be mandated when you, it's funny, when, it's not funny, I guess, when you look at the first of the video, it had two policemen walking down the hall. Well, part of the problem at the police station, the hallways are too narrow. So when you look at risk and you look at what the province are going to mandate it, if you can't walk with the prisoner side by side at 2, you can't do it at a station. Everything's narrow. So we are mandated by the province, and it's best practice. And the province will say to us eventually, and it could happen, it happened close with some other departments, if you don't fix it, we're going to come and take it over. And if they mandate it and have to run anything, you know, the province, and like Todd's here, but he's not government, it's going to be at a higher standard and a higher price than I believe that we can do it for. So we have to get out in front. We look at roads, I think that figure will go. The wastewater is 12 million to basically do secondary storage. That's going to probably fix us for the next 10 years. Is it going to fix the whole problem? No, this has to be Build Belleville 1. Once we finish this, we're going to have to look at Build Belleville 2, and we're going to have to look at Build Belleville 3. Either that or we'll just say Ellis is gone and we won't ever do this again. Water is 15 million. That's for the water main, the main water main that we spoke about. And downtown, we look at 15 million for downtown. I look at what Mayor Williams has spent in downtown and his CAO the other day. They've done it. They started with small steps, which we tried, and basically have done it over 7 years, and they've lotted. John figures they're up around the $20 million mark. Our downtown is bigger than Mayor Williams' downtown. This will get a block and a half done. It'll get a start. People that invest in our downtown, and we'll talk about the slides, and you've seen, you know, basically why we're doing it, but cities have shown economic spin in their downtown. If you name a few, you look at Huntsville. I believe Huntsville did their downtown. Retail sales over on Huntsville went up 15%. London did their downtown. Population growth in downtown London went up 17% in their downtown core. Downtown population in general in London is probably up about 5%. Mayor Williams has done his downtown. He's plus 10 stores right now and climbing. So it's a matter of starting somewhere. Moving from there, you know, our debt load capacity, when you look at what we're allowed to borrow and we're there, we're still going to have a ceiling and we're going to still have room if there's anything going. Now, one of my staff said, you know, maybe we should just keep waiting for the government. If we do this plan, what happens if we get everything fixed and then Todd comes in and he's government of the day and Todd says, I got $50 million for you, or I got $20 million for you. Well, we've got a lot of other projects to do. So I mean, if that happens, God bless it, great, but there's not going to be a lack, as Mr. Kester said in the video, there's not a lack of things to fix. So how can we do this? Basically, we could do it, and I said to council and staff have punched it out. Some of it will be user fees, some will be on the tax base. There's lots of options. It's about basically what's unallotted and paying the payment. So depending on what we borrow, if we borrow 80 million, our principal and interest payment twice a year, we're looking around the 5 million mark. Well, when you look at our business of what we have, there's a thing called unallotted revenue. This council put the largest municipal solar panel or municipal solar farm in Canada on the roof of this building. Our solar, if we receive our next 2 contracts and with our 3 microfits, we will have approximately close to $1 million in solar revenues coming in for the next 20 years that's unallotted. We also have Viridian, which I basically sit on the board of Viridian. We have dividend and interest and income of about $1.2 million a year that's unallotted. So we could apply that to the 5 million. So there we've come up with 2 million. We have another $1 million in loans and grants and other things that are coming due that are already on the tax bill that we can shift. So basically, we could figure out this to do a 0% tax increase. Now, with doing a 0% tax increase, everybody likes that on the infrastructure thing. But the problem with doing 0%, and I think Councillor Thompson pointed this out, some people pointed it out at Probus, that we're still letting things grip behind, that we should still keep up on our current infrastructure minimum that we're doing approximately 15 years and run both plans. So this is something that Council's got to discuss. This is something that we'll be discussing the first week in February of how we want to pay for this if Council wants to do it, what are the options, and what are the projects that have merit, and if there are different projects that have different merit. Perfect storms. The perfect storm is basically a series of events that on their own wouldn't affect us. But we have some perfect storms out, but all together is going to knock us out. And that perfect storms are here. When you start adding things up, if you add up the bridge, the bridge, can we take it at once? Yes. But there's a lot of environmental problems that we have out, and some of them are in the news. When you look at the coal tar situation, we have estimated on that probably about a $10 to $15 million cleanup, and that's going to be partnered hopefully with some other corporations, but we're probably going to have the lion's share of that. We built a garbage dump on Switz Island. Some of you are aware of that. We are monitoring that. We are taxed with contingent liabilities that we have all over, and we've never kept track of those liabilities. We have dumps that we closed in Thurlow. We have a lot of things that happened in the 30s and 20s, and the environment right now is in the forefront. So when you look at all these things, if the coal tar and we let everything hit, we're going to have the perfect storm, and we're not going to be able to get out from underneath it.